trying to figure out where to go. We'll start with this one. We'll start with a softball because I know what to say. All right, here we go. What is your favorite hymn and why? And those of you who were at the care team retreat yesterday are amused because I answered this question with you all yesterday. So my favorite hymn is, if you look in the gray hymnal, it's number 140. It's called Hail the Glorious Golden City. And it is a hymn that I sort of fell in love with at the First Unitarian Church of Baltimore, which has an enormous pipe organ, right? It's a church, the building was built in 1818, and so it's beautiful inside. There's like a Tiffany mosaic of the Last Supper, there's Tiffany stained glass windows, there's like a beautiful Neiman organ, and it's a real banger on the organ. And the lyrics to it, which there are ways that it sounds like dated, like if you sort of listen to a recording of it, there's ways that it sounds dated, and there's ways that some of the language sounds a little dated, but the lyrics to Hail the Glorious Golden City were written by Felix Adler. Felix Adler is one of the founders of the ethical culture movement, which is one of the most significant movements of religious humanism in the United States, and he was one of the founders of the New York Society for Ethical Culture, and that ethical culture movements, which are sort of, right, they're religious humanism, so it's not the sort of, like angry anti-religious humanism, which is also a strain of humanism that exists, but it's humanism that suggests that there's still value in gathering together in religious community, even if we do it without a deity. And so Felix Adler is a founder in that, and so that is my favorite hymn. And those of you who can read music or who remember when I made you sing the third verse of this earlier this spring, is that the hymn tune to number 140 is a hymn tune called Hyferdral, I think is how you pronounce it, and that is the hymn tune that is the base melody for Blue Boat Home. Ooh. Which is, I would say, if we polled you all right now, that is the most common favorite hymn in Unitarian Universalism is Blue Boat Home. All right, what is the starkest difference between your theology now and your theology when you were 17 years old? Ooh. So the preamble to this that's important, that if you don't know, is that I was raised Unitarian Universalist. My mother was a Unitarian Universalist. My grandparents were Unitarian Universalists. So I grew up in this context. And the way I think of it is that that many people who come out of other religious traditions, that part of their journey in Unitarian Universalism is reacting to their home tradition, and that I never had that experience. The tradition that I am, and the theology that I sort of move in reaction to is this one, and not any other. And so I would say the biggest difference is that I would say over the course of my college years, I became a theist, and I don't know that my actual theology changed that much, but I found that that both the word and the concept of God was deeply meaningful for me, and that that part of how that was possible is that I didn't have I didn't have a lot of baggage around the word God, right? I had grown up with the sort of I had grown up with the concept of God is love and there's no hell, and that all of that other baggage didn't exist for me. And so I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin, and went to Arizona State University for college. And so some of sort of where I came to that position and that place of feeling like I need some language and some concept to describe the immensity of the universe and time and my relationship to it, and that was driving through the American West, right? Seeing the Rocky Mountains for the first time, seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time, seeing southern Utah and the Arizona Painted Desert for the first time. I feel like I understood in a way that I just conceptually could not, living here, how old the Earth is and what a tiny blip humanity is. We're a new project, human beings. Mammals, new project. compared to the literal age of the earth, of the rock, of the stone that exists. And in the face of that level of immensity, I need God language to sort of arrange that in my mind and heart. Oh, we'll do a spicy one next. I try to arrange them, like spicy, not spicy. What were your discoveries about this area's drinking culture? You're like, ooh, spicy. Which is both, for me, it was both a discovery and a rediscovery. Like I said, I grew up in Racine. And so I would say that my first discovery about Wisconsin's drinking culture actually took place when right when I moved, when I left Wisconsin, and realized the extent to which like functional alcoholism was like the norm, was accepted as like was accepted as a feature of the culture rather than a problem, and began to see the ways that like that wasn't, like everybody did not live this way. Like it's not normal everywhere for like people to just drink in their snowmobile suit at like 6 a.m. Which is normal here. It is normal, it is accepted. That's like right? Sometimes I describe us as like cold New Orleans with Lutherans. Because it's true. We do love a party. We love an excuse, but specifically we love to drink outside, right? That's a feature of Wisconsin that I could not have identified while I lived here, but then leaving, I was like, we will put up a tent in any weather. We will tap a keg in any weather. And that is, like, there's ways that is this, like, beautiful celebratory energy. We love to have fun. You have to celebrate when it's, like, winter 9 months a year. But that's also, that's also deeply troubling. And I think that part of what changed for me coming back, right, so we're weaving in little biographical moments. I left Wisconsin when I was 18. I could not wait to leave Racine, Wisconsin. You could not have paid me money to continue living in Racine, Wisconsin when I was 18 years old. Like really, I was like, I need at least a time zone between me and this place. And returning this time in this role, not just as a person who lives here, but as a person sort of charged with accompanying people through life's difficult moments, have seen the extent of the impact that drinking culture and alcoholism has had on the lives of, I would say, the numerical majority of people in the sanctuary any Sunday. I would say that the literal majority of people in this room right now have either are in recovery, are living with alcoholism, and I don't mean that to say that there is only, right, like I'm not a teetotaler, like I drink, and I had to radically change my relationship to alcohol in order to like not have alcoholism become part of my family's story, because it was already part, right? It was part of my family of origin. And I remember I had an early interaction with someone here at the fellowship. We were, having a pastoral care session, and they said to me, I'm the adult child of an alcoholic. And then they paused and sort of chuckled and said, "It's Northeast Wisconsin. How can you not be?" And so it's a deeply pervasive piece of the culture that we struggle to talk about, because it tends to veer in one of two directions. Either sort of like, why do you hate fun? Pour the liquor, or right? People who are in recovery, who don't drink, and who are sort of rightfully for their lives hold a hard line, that that's not part of their life anymore. But that I think what I feel like I've discovered is that there's a space in the middle missing where we're able to talk about the impacts that a culture that promotes this much drinking has on like people's lives, in a way that is hard to talk about because it cuts at so many foundational assumptions about what it means to be a Wisconsinite. Sorry for that real bummer of an ending. Okay. We'll lift it up. Who was an impactful mentor for you? So I've had lots of wonderful and impactful mentors in my life. I've been really lucky. And one who has been really impactful for me was my internship supervisor, the Reverend Fred Muir, who was, those of you who you might know his name, Fred was also Reverend Christina's internship supervisor. And you might have met him at her installation here. So Fred was, so this is what I'll say. I met Fred at the end of his career in parish ministry. He retired about a year and a half after I did my internship, at the congregation in Annapolis, Maryland. And Fred was very chill. He had what I can only describe as senioritis kind of the year that I was his intern. And was also renovating his house and living out of a suitcase for most of the year. And so there was a lot going on for Fred. But that Fred showed me that ministry is about relationships, right? That this work is about relationships, both my relationships with all of you and your relationships with each other. And that it's hard to quantify that, right? It's hard to put office hours around that. It's hard to say, when you're on and when you're off. And so, one of the things he said to me was, I said, Fred, how do you track your hours? How do you know you're not working too much? How do you figure it out? Right, just desperate not to set myself up to burn out, which is a very common feature of being a clergy person. And he just sort of, looked at me thoughtfully and said, Hannah, there's ebbs and flows in ministry, and you have to take them. And that advice I have really carried that with me in terms of recognizing that there will be times where this work will ask more of me than feels possible. And there's also times where this work will be so flexible and let my life take up more space in my week, and that's okay. And that I don't have to sort of obsess over the number of hours in either direction. So which has been very helpful. Okay. I put these in an order, and then I always regret the order and reorder them while I'm talking. Tell us about our cardinal and what it represents. So there is often a cardinal who, hangs out sometimes in that window space over there, and in other spaces around the fellowship grounds. That's the place that you are most able to observe the cardinal, who, right, it's sort of the was the Buddha one person or are there many people? It's possible there's more than one cardinal, and other heretical viewpoints that I have. And, I think people ascribe a lot of meaning to the cardinal, and I don't always. I'm right, the cardinal's it's the concept of God. What does the cardinal mean to you? And I would say if you, a song that I've really enjoyed, and that I think speaks to many people's understandings of the cardinal is that the country singer Casey Musgraves was good friends with the late folk singer John Prine, who died sort of unexpectedly during the pandemic, and she wrote a song called Cardinal. That's the first song on her new album, Deeper Well, and it's a tribute to John Prine, and it's about the signs that she sees, wondering if her friend is trying to speak to her from the other side, or if it's just a bird. So I would say you can check out Cardinal by Casey Musgraves. We'll do one, and then we'll do okay. What is the best and worst thing about organized religion? I think the best thing about organized religion is that it provides a space in which people can connect with each other, connect with themselves, and connect with that which is bigger than any of us. Right? That's the deep human urge that organized religion can meet. And when it's at its best, that is what it's doing, right? It's a container for making meaning about our relationship to ourselves, relationships to each other, and our relationship to that which is beyond us. And the worst part about organized religion is fundamentalists of every stripe, in every corner, in every country, in every tradition, who take hold of the organization and run it into the ground. Right? Because it seems like as long as there's been religion, there's been religious fundamentalists, and also people opposing religious fundamentalism. It's not limited to any stripe. We're fundamentalists are everywhere, it turns out. Okay, we're gonna do a rapid fire. Are you ready? These are ones with short answers. Why do we always have coffee? Because I think we want to be hospitable. What's the best way to celebrate a 97th birthday? Bonus point if she is Irish. I have an answer, but I feel like it goes in the face of that question about drinking culture. So I would say, depending on your speed, either Jameson or Guinness stew, where the alcohol has been cooked out. Or both, I don't know. What did you learn about our fellowship when you cleaned your office last week? Well, I learned about that doorknob. And I would say that I learned the most because I found the search packet about this congregation that you sent to Reverend Leah when she was searching, right? So it's a snapshot of where the congregation was in about 2011, 2012. And I learned that you are profoundly proud of this place, that you love this place, and you want other people to love it alongside you, and that is wonderful. Yay. And I gave that binder to the archives so it can be preserved. What is the average age of our congregation? I have no idea. What is your favorite smell at the fellowship? I really love the smell of stored candles, like wax. This is how you can tell that I grew up as a church nerd. Any of you who have worked in institutional religion or are recovering altar boys or whatever, right? You know that there is candles, if you open a cabinet of just unscented plain wax candles, you know that it has a smell, right? That smell is wax. And that smell to me that's church, that's home. Prior to clergy, what was your occupation? I was a middle school English to speakers of other languages teacher in Baltimore City Public Schools. And I will say, I wish that my time as a middle school teacher were not as applicable to my work as it is. If you feel called out, that's between you and the higher power of your understanding. I didn't say anything. And the last one that I'll answer is, and I did not have time for all of them, I'm sorry. How do we as UUs show love to the people who have put so much hate into the world? And what I would say is that you are not actually personally responsible for loving them directly. Like, you don't have to love everyone. A theology of universalism, meaning that all people, whatever you understand of salvation, however you would define that word, whether it's the ability to flourish as a human being or something that happens in the afterlife, it's available to all people. But that's not the same thing as feeling love in your heart for every human being on this earth, which is not possible. And part of my, right, like this is part of where that God language for me comes in, is that thank goodness God loves everyone because I cannot. And that is how I think of it, right? Like, I cannot love everyone, but I do know that everyone is equally deserving of love. But that's not the same thing as me interpersonally loving everyone, because that is not going to happen.